nice to see you again. My name is Catherine. If you don't remember, I'm your financial advisor. So we've already talked about investing, we've talked about how to improve your credit score, and today I thought we would talk a little bit more longer term. I'll be using retirement as a frame of reference, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. I'll be talking specifically about how you can retire as a millionaire. Now please don't think I'm trying to sell snake oil. I'm going to take you through all of the calculations to show you why that is a very real possibility for the average person, and even below average in terms of your economic status. So you may already have a pension that you've been contributing into. So I'm going to take you through a few scenarios where you already have been contributing to a pension, or some where you can essentially start right now and continue. I'm going to take you through lots of different scenarios in which the end result is that you end up with £1 million nest egg, as we call it. That's just a general way to refer to your investments as a whole. So that could include a pension, general investments, or an individual savings account, and I'll talk about the situations in which those things would be appropriate. So let's say that when you started contributing to your pension, there was a 40-year gap until your target retirement age. I'll take you through a few more of these as we go on, but I'm just going to show you how it's very feasible to get that million pension pot, whether that's pounds, dollars, etc. So if you contribute 408 per month, and you do that for 40 years, you will end up with just over £1 million in your nest egg. So that's, either just your pension, if that's all you've contributed to, if you've contributed to a pension, if you've contributed to an ISA and other investments and stuff like that. That's what the nest egg is comprised of. Or your nest egg could literally just be the amount that you just have in your pension, because it's perfectly fine to just have a pension. So if you contributed 408, and bear in mind when I say you contributed, any employer or workplace pension scheme that lots of countries have. I know in the UK it's described as a workplace pension, I think, and in the US quite often it's a 401k. So in those situations, for example with the 401k, your employer is obligated to match your contributions of your salary up to 6%. And financial experts recommend that you contribute 10 to 15% of your salary, of your earnings per month, into a pension. But as long as you have one of those schemes, I appreciate not everyone does, we'll get to that in a second. But if you have one of those schemes, you only need to contribute 6%, and then your employer will contribute 6% also to match yours. And that will take you to 12%. So when I say you're putting 408 into your pension each month, I'm not necessarily meaning that. You can work out how much you would be contributing based on what you're putting in, and then what your employer, or in some cases the government, matches. I will, if you want to know, I can always send you the link to the calculator that I use online. So back to the calculation. So if you're contributing 408 a month for 40 years, you will end up with over £1 million. When you contribute 408 per month, you only end up contributing about 194,400 overall, if you do that for 40 years. So you might be thinking, why on earth has it times by more than 5? Why is my investment times by more than 5? And so we're going to take you through why exactly that is. And you've probably heard this phrase before, maybe you have an idea of what it means, maybe you're completely versed in it, but I'm just going to take you through everything just in case. So on average, the market, as in the stock market, grows by 7% per year. And so in the first year, for example, each 408 per month that you contribute, so each 408 contribution earns £28.35. So that's £28.35 or $28.35 depending on where you are, or whatever currency that is to you. Obviously a millionaire means different things in different countries. So across the year, each of those 408 contributions earns £28.35. And that is the 7% increase. However, the following year, all of that money also increases by 7%. So you're not just earning on the original deposit that you made each month, you're earning on all of the money that has been made on that money. And across many years, this just keeps growing. So I hope I've illustrated there, but that's just taking into account 1 year. If you then do 7% upon each previous contribution and take that forward 40 years, you can imagine you're going to have a lot. And in our case, it's over 5 times what you have actually deposited. So those are in the best case scenarios where, you start investing at 20, 21, 22. That isn't always the case. And quite often, a young person doesn't have that much to be contributing to a pension, or at least it feels like they don't, because it is the curse of the way that our society is set up that when you're young, you quite often want to be spending a lot of money, especially as you're just coming out from being a child and then becoming an adult. You want to experience the world, but then the salary is the lowest at this end, and again, conversely, you get the most value out of the money that you put in earliest. As I just explained about compound interest, the more years that has to work, the more value that gains. So yeah, it is tricky, but it's worth it to invest early in your pension pot if you can. And I would just like to say also that if you can't contribute 408, for example, I would aim for 100 no matter what, as soon as possible. Even if you think, oh, that's absolutely nothing, like it's not going to affect me in the grand scheme of things. 100 invested early, whether that's dollars, pounds, euros, etc., is going to be incredibly valuable in the long term, because you've given it so long to grow and earn interest upon that interest over 40 years. So I want to see you contributing at least 100. And they say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the second best time is right now. So that is what I want you to do. So I'll take you through another example, because when people hear, 40 years, I've already missed the boat, I'm 30 or whatever, I'll take you through what would happen if you invested for 30 years. And in a little bit, I'll take you through what you need to do if you want to retire early. So in the case of investing for 30 years, you would need to invest. When I say you, I mean the sum of yourself and your employer. You would need to invest 856 each month, which obviously is quite a significant chunk. But again, when I'm talking about you, I'm talking about the contribution of your own salary and then also your employer's match to that salary. So if you have 30 years and you want to get to, again, just over $1 million, you would need to contribute 856, and this means you'd have contributed just over 300,000, which is obviously quite a bit more than the original if you'd have started 40 years before retirement. But you're still more than tripling your investment. It's very much still worth doing from, this point in time. Now, as I said just before, quite often when we're younger, quite often a younger person will have less money to put away than an older person, but regardless, I would like you to start putting away 100 now, and then as your wage increases or as your business grows, then you just generally start earning more money. I would like you to scale up those contributions, and there are different calculators to help you work out how you can still reach that million by starting off with a small amount and then gradually with incremental increases in how much you put away each month, year on year, you can reach that million nest egg. And it is feasible. I hope I've shown that from the calculations I did. Don't worry, I know that by no means are those sums small amounts of money. I know that it is difficult for a lot of people to feel like they have the spare liquidity to put that money into a pension, which is why I just say just find 100, do what you can, because as I showed with the first example where you're starting early and saving for 40 years, just the impact of investing early is really just as huge as saving lots later. Now, for some people, for health reasons and otherwise, it might not be prudent to put all of that away into just a pension, because as I'm sure you know, pensions are inaccessible until your mid to potentially late 60s at this point. Some self-invested personal pensions are different and they let you take it out at 55, I believe, but the government / workplace pensions, they're late 60s, and I'm very aware some people have health conditions that compromise their life expectancy, or they just know that they're going to need the money to pay for care earlier on. In this case, I still think that contributing to a pension is a good idea. However, I also think, and there is equally a place for contributing to something like an ISA, an individual savings account, or if you want to manage your own investments and you know your self-control is up to the job, you can invest in the stock market yourself, pick all the stocks you want, and then just leave it in there. But I would go for as high diversification as you can. I would also go for ETFs or funds that comprise a whole load of different companies, so you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. And I would say slower, steady growth companies, like for example the FANG companies. They're not exactly slow growing, but they're not going to have the huge exponential growth that a unicorn startup might. So I go for very, very safe stocks, and you can search for what stocks and funds, ETFs, etc. are safe online. So if you're thinking it's going to be difficult to get to the point where you're financially secure later down the line, I'm going to share a few things that I think would help you to firstly invest in your pension or ISA or similar provisions for later down the line, all stock market based really. And I'll start by saying keep your costs right now as low as possible, because as I said, the more you can contribute early is going to be more valuable than contributing later down the line. And I know that is disheartening in a sense, because we all generally earn more money later down the line than we do at the beginning. So if there are any corners you can cut and maybe commit to 2 or 3 years of being very frugal, maybe just making that sacrifice, that short-term sacrifice for yourself, because it will pay off massively, because 400 invested now is going to be worth a lot more than if it was invested 5 or 10 years down the line. So that's one idea. Keep costs as low as possible. Think, where in my life can I cut the costs, and then set up a direct debit to your pension would be a good idea. The second one is to avoid debt. Now, I know that student debt is a problem for a lot of people, less so when it's income dependent, but I know there are lots of other situations, and that really demands an appointment by itself. This isn't the kind of debt that we're going to worry about right now, because firstly, it's not going to affect your ability to put money into a pension pot. It's not very high interest, which is the stuff that I want you to make sure that you never get. So if you have credit card debt, do everything you can to pay it off. Never ever take out a payday loan if you can absolutely avoid it. And on that note, I would like to recommend, alongside contributing to a pension, you must create an emergency savings pot. And if this has to come at the expense of not making a pension contribution, then I understand that, because you need to be able to pay for surprise costs, because I don't want you taking out credit card debt, and I don't want you taking out a payday loan, definitely not, just to ensure that you don't take on that kind of high interest debt, because it more or less always becomes very, very expensive. I already mentioned cutting costs, but obviously there are cases where costs just can't be cut. You know, there's lots of people living very, very frugally at the moment. You know, the cost of living crisis is affecting everyone. So in those cases, and again, this would just be temporary, as I said about keeping costs low for 2 or 3 years, maybe consider taking on another source of income for this, you know, short amount of time while you build up your savings fund and contribute to your pension pot, just because it will pay off, you know, 5-fold if you think about the calculations we did to come up with that million. You know, if you started 40 years earlier, you could 5 times your investment. If you started 30 years earlier than your target retirement age, then you could 3 times your investment. So yeah, earlier is ideal, and again, you don't have to opt for the amount that I said. You can just go for that 100 target, and then it will pay off significantly later down the line. Now, if you don't want to do this, if you don't want to cut costs and you don't want to take on more work, obviously it's very common to have other responsibilities on your time. Perhaps you're stretched too thin, and I would never ever want you to sacrifice any part of your health or your sleep for the sake of making more money. So in that case, potentially not aiming for the million nest egg, or, you know, you can, but by contributing more later down the line, obviously it would have to be quite a bit more, but it's still very doable. Perhaps you could ask for a pay rise, or you could even invest in your own training to get qualified for higher paying roles, and then hopefully, you know, you can make more contributions later down the line, higher contributions I should say. So there are lots of ways of getting that, and you don't need to save $1 million in order to get $1 million overall into your nest egg, especially as I've said, often you have the workplace matching schemes and government matching schemes, and that will, you know, knock off a bit of that cost per month. Something along the lines of cost is that when you do start earning more money, quite a common thing to happen is lifestyle inflation. while, you know, in some cases this is perfectly legitimate, for example, if you're growing a family and you need a bigger house in order to, you know, grow that family, then, you know, spending more money on a larger mortgage can make sense, especially because if you take on a mortgage, which is obviously a form of debt, this can contribute to you paying far lower or zero in some cases if you pay your mortgage off costs in terms of living, the actual shelter. It was a weird way for me to describe it, but in terms of the actual place where you live, you don't have to pay that, or you pay very little on that when you enter your retirement. That is an ideal situation, and one of the biggest draws, I think, to buying your own home is ensuring that you don't need to worry about those costs. Obviously you'll need to worry about repair costs and utilities and stuff like that, but it does knock a huge amount off. However, unnecessary lifestyle inflation, perhaps you're just trying to keep up with the Joneses, and perhaps you think that, oh, I'm at this success level now, I should have an apartment that looks like this, or I should have clothes that look like this, and you know, different suit for every day of the week, and you don't need to do it. And the mantra I personally live by is, would I buy this with my own money if no one else could see that I had it? That's one thing, and mainly that's to do with blingy items, which have never attracted me anyway, really. But then when it comes to things like, you know, the big spacious apartment, it's like, could you live somewhere and be just as happy even if, you know, it doesn't look as flash? I don't believe in saving to the point of, you know, reducing your quality of life significantly and missing out on experiences. Like, you know, if you want to travel to the other side of the world and have like this bucket list type experience there, then absolutely go ahead and spend your money on that, because you know, it's a priceless moment in the storyboard of your life. But essentially anything else, anything that just has the glitz and isn't going to provide much emotionally to you, I would just avoid, and then just scale up your contributions to your pension or your ISA or just your investments in general. Okay. Now, the final thing we can do to make sure you're comfortable in your later years is to consider what you might like to do in that time. So lots of people like just a little bit of income coming in so that they can keep their $1 million or £1 million nest egg topped up. So obviously the first one is probably the one that most people would think of, which is getting a rental property. But obviously that is quite a privileged position to be in. There's lots of resources online if you want to consider that, but it is a very good source of income in your later years. And then obviously you can pass that property down to your beneficiaries later down the line. But there's much more you can do. So, and I'll get to the very best one at the end. This is my favourite one, but before then, lots of older people find that they are at a loose end when they quit work, you know, potentially for the first time ever, where they've had such a huge span of time where it wasn't accounted for. So lots of older people find value in working part-time, like not even 20 hours, just a few hours every week. You could do consulting in your field of expertise, you could do freelancing in your field of expertise, you could tutor young people, and then there are a few more things off the beaten path, like registering as a house sitter, a cat sitter, dog sitter, and even renting out your driveway. You could see if you could sell, you know, the products of a hobby or craft that you've always enjoyed but never had the time to kind of see where it might take you in that way. Or you could even dabble in content creation. You don't need to worry about making a sort of living at this age. It's just nice to have a little bit coming in. And really you should only be doing things that you enjoy doing. So only if any of those things actually appeal to you should you do it for the money. But it is nice just to top up the pension part of it. But my favourite option for both an income stream now and also for when you are older is dividend stocks. And different types of stocks can really affect how much income you earn from them in retirement. So if you're at least 10 to 15 years away from your retirement, I would strongly recommend prioritizing growth over yield. So yield of a dividend stock, this is what the dividend stock will advertise, is the percentage of the value of the stock that you earn as income. So say if it's got a 2% yield, that it is paying out 2% of its stock price as income. So a dividend stock of 2% just means that annually you will receive 2% of the stock's price. So this initially, it might look worse than, for example, a stock with 5% where you get, more of a percentage of dividend. But if you've got a stock where the growth of the company is just skyrocketing and it has a low dividend yield, and you're still quite a bit away from retirement, then I would strongly recommend looking for growth over the yield. Obviously, in an ideal world, we'd have high yield and high growth of the company. So yes, that's my favourite, just very passive way to earn income, which you can set up right now in your retirement. Okay. Did that sound fine to you? Okay. If you have any questions, let me know. I think we've made good grounds today. And if you want to, check out more about the stock market and investments in general, then you can check out one of our previous appointments, and I'm sure that will help you when it comes to your pension, because your pension is influenced massively by the stock market, because it's essentially invested in the stock market. Okay, it was really, really good to see you.